And despite the fact that they were displaced, so their nation was disintegrated, their homeland was disintegrated. These people have managed to reconstitute themselves as a nation because the attachment to their land is so strong, is maternal, is visceral. The dock workers in Italy and other parts of Europe going on strike. And then there are the Serbian students and the Serbian young population, and that's actually the Serbian population, taking the streets against the government. And then if we take all these good examples, and then we have the BDS movement telling us how to be ethical purchases, ethical sales, ethical investment, which is basically try not to buy products that have to do with Israeli economy. Israel has killed nearly 73,000 people. 73,000 people killed by bombs and sniper fire, and the use of unconventional weapons like thermic bombs and other crazy things that they are testing on the Palestinians. The United States and others and the Israelis are discussing to transform Gaza in the Riviera of the Middle East. Gaza is a land, a polluted land, a devastated land of mass graves. What are you going to build over that?
Zdravo svima. Dobrodošli u posebno izdanje epizode Agelast podcasta na koji želim da obratite pažnju i da ne preskočite ovaj uvodni deo da bismo vam dali kontekst razgovora koji sledi. Pre svega, pre nego što počnemo, želim puno se zahvalim svima vama koji nas podržavate mesečnim donacijama na sajtu koji se zove Patreon i sve vas koji nas podržavate možda nekim jednokratnim donacijama preko PayPala, kriptovaluta ili nešto slično. Linkovi sve su u opisu i hvala vam puno na tome. Također, želim da se zahvalim puno našim sponzorima bez kojih ceo ovaj sadržaj ne bi bio moguć. Tu su pre svega naravno naši partneri iz Volta, kao što znate u pitanju sajt za kućnu dostavu i sa promo kodom Agelast ostvarujete 4 puta 250 dinara popusta na prve 4 poručbine. Također, želimo da se zahvalimo našim dugogodišnjim partnerima kompaniji A1 Srbija. Ne znam da li ste znali, ali A1 Srbija 4. godinu za redom nosi priznanje za najbržu mobilnu mrežu u našoj zemlji prema nezavisnoj Ookla speed test analizi povezanosti sa ocenom 79,01, što je za 27,89% brže od konkurencije na modernim uređajima i čestitamo im na tome. Čekajte šta A1 ima u ponudi na linku koji se nalazi u opisu ove ili bilo koje druge epizode. Također, želimo se zahvalimo i našim partnerima iz Mazde. Kao što znate, svaki put pomenemo jedan od 5 postulata koji sačinjavaju kor njihovog brenda i ovog puta želimo da pomenemo Takumi majstore koje smo nekada davno dosta često pominjali. Takumi majstori su naravno ljudi koji su ceo svoj život posvetili tome da u jednoj stvari dostignu savršenstvo. Savršenstvo naravno nije moguće doseći, ali to je ideal kome se teži. Ima i ona čuvena knjiga Outliers koja govori o nekih 10.000 sati koje je neophodno uložiti da biste postali master nekakve veštine ili da biste usavršili nekakav talent. Upravo su to Takumi majstori. Takumi je jedan od 5 postulata koji se činjavaju core Mazdinog brenda i bez kojih ideologija same kompanije ne funkcioniše. Čekajte šta Mazda ima u svojoj ponudi u opisu ove ili bilo koje druge epizode i hvala vam puno na tome. A sada je došao trenutak da predstavimo našu gošću. Ovaj veoma važan i vrlo ekskluzivan razgovor je sa specijalnom izvestiteljkom Ujedinjenih nacija za pitanja okupirane teritorije Palestine od 1967. godine i ona je prva žena koja vodi mandat na toj poziciji, njeno ime je Francesca Albanese. Francesca Albanese je vrlo vokalna i u javnosti veoma dobro poznata kao neko ko otvoreno govori o sukobu i o genocidu koji se dešava nad palestinskim narodom u pojasu Gaze i sa time šta Izrael radi. Njeni izveštaj, 2 izveštaja godišnje koje mora da predstavi, govore jako dobro o svemu što se dešava i njih ćemo staviti u pinovane komentare ispod epizode da možete i sami da ih pročitate. U pitanju su anatomija genocida, odnosno Anatomy of Genocide, od ekonomije okupacije do ekonomije genocida, dakle from economy of occupation to economy of genocide. Također treći izveštaj je bio Genocide as a colonial erasure, dakle genocid kao kolonijalno brisanje i četvrti izveštaj koji je bio u oktobru 2025. godine nosi naziv Gaza Genocide, a collective crime, dakle genocid u Gazi kolektivni zločin i objavljen je upravo i 5. izveštaj koji govori o mučenjima kojima su svedočili u pojasu Gaze. Izveštaji se rade na osnovu iscrpnih informacija koje se dobijaju svedočenjem, veštačenjem, sudskim iskazima, dokazima sa terena, videosnimcima, materijalnim i naravno u situacijama kada je to moguće obilaskom terena. Nažalost, Franceski je to obilazak zemalja i obilazak samih lokacija onemogućen, stavljene su i sankcije, zamrznuti su i računi i vodi se ogromna kampanja protiv onoga što ona govori, tako da uopšte prilika da razgovaramo sa njome je vrlo važna i izuzetno smo počastvovani i nadamo se da ćete i vi posvetiti pažnju ovom ekskluzivnom i, kao što smo već rekli, vrlo važnom razgovoru. Dakle, naša sledeća gošća je Francesca Albanese a razgovor će biti vođen na engleskom jeziku, ali imat ćemo i prevod, odnosno titlove. Hvala vam. So you were saying, please continue. Palestinians, after the first Intifada, they showed really, the act of solidarity.
Yeah, no, but in general, think of the Palestinians are not different to other indigenous people in settler colonial context where they were, at a certain point, clearly slated for erasure. It's not different from the Native Americans. It's not different from the indigenous people. Oh, hi, Agelast. I didn't realize it was you. Sorry. It's not different from the Aboriginal people who were displaced and replaced by the colonists, by the settlers. And the thing is that unlike other people, and despite the fact that they were displaced, so their nation was disintegrated, their homeland was disintegrated, these people have managed to reconstitute themselves as a nation because the attachment to their land is so strong, is maternal, is visceral. And it's something that, think of the key that they hold in their chest of drawer or hanging in their homes. It's not just that it's the most precious belonging, the most precious jewel they have, but it also operates like a root planted in each person. Of course, there are exceptions, but this is what they keep on functioning as a people. And it's so telling. And so throughout various phases of history, they have worked through this spirit of unity. And this is why I want people to reflect on the word sumud, because sumud is not just resilience, is staying put. It means, if you look at in Arabic, the roots of the word means staying put, staying still, staying strong. So there is a storm and I don't move. The world falls apart and I don't move. And I'll keep on returning. And this is incredible of the Palestinians. It's such a method for resistance, a manual of resistance in these difficult times for all of us.
Yes, but it's very difficult to get that message across through the media ecosystem the way it is right now.
Of course, but it's so functional because Palestinians are a thorn in the side, not just of Israel, not just of Arab plutocrats who have exploited their cause for their own interest, but actually they are plotting against them. They're not the majority of Arab countries or Arab rulers, no, but they're very influential. And today they are a thorn in the side of the so-called Western democracies that are completely Israelized. I often refer to Israelization of Western democracies or quasi-democracies because we, for example, in Italy, in Germany, in France, in Europe in general, Israel has been portrayed as the sole democracy of the Middle East and a liberal democracy, which is not. But then if you look at the kind of democracy they are referring to, you see why they're doing what they're doing to their societies. I will explain myself. Israel is a democracy in the sense that the people in Israel vote. It doesn't matter if they contain and oppress other people. There are always others. And in Europe today, there are many others. There are migrants, refugees, and other unwanted minorities who are treated as an encumbrance. And then what Israel does is to use the power of technology, to use the power of narrative, to use military power. Actually, military power comes first, to make sure that this unwanted encumbrance doesn't bother them, doesn't bother the democracies. They can continue to complain and they will be repressed. Same thing as it's happening in Europe. And the pro-Palestine solidarity movement has been a test. Freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, everything has been crushed over the past 2 years, because as long as you stand against the system that Western liberal democracies and Israel are part of, they are they are one system. They stand for the same values. They operate according to the same principles. And I think this is why I think that we should get the lesson from the Palestinians, or at the time of the first Intifada and even before. How do we stick together? Because I'm not sure the Palestinians have the energy right now, the capacity right now, after 35 years of pretense of a peace process, and which has crushed them completely and has fragmented also the...
You're talking about the two-state solution?
Yeah.
Okay.
We international community have contributed to this encroachment of the worst form of occupation, which is the one that has taken place during the so-called peace process years. The occupation has gone into the veins of the system. Israel has been legitimized to be in Area A, in Area B of the West Bank, to further isolate Gaza, to take over Jerusalem, with countries even recognizing Jerusalem as the capital, Serbia, as the capital of Israel. So we have normalized the taking over of their land and of their life, while talking about a two-state solution. You see the power of narrative. It was already operating. Now we are seeing this phenomenon on steroids because of technology, because of how fast media can transform, can create narratives, can amplify narratives and make them run or fly. But we are part of the same. So Western democracies are Israelized to the point that they can deploy army in their city centers and kill civilians, dissenting, as it's happening in the US, or as it's happening in the UK, in Germany, in France, in Italy, where they're passing illiberal laws, and accuse journalists and civil society of terrorism and anti-Semitism as a way to silence them. It's the same kind of model.
So parts of this were presented, I believe, in your third report, the Genocide of Colonial Erasure. We were gonna talk about that a little bit later on. I wanted to start a conversation focusing a little bit on you and your and your path to the place that you are right now, because you were born and raised in the south of Italy, in Campania, right, the region, and Palestinian question of the Palestine was something different where in the area where you were born and raised. And you were born and raised also in precarious times, especially for the south of Italy, because of mafia, because of Omerta, because of Judge Falcone, and everything that happened around that time. How do you remember those times, and can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. The Italy in which I grew up was very familiar with Palestine and very close to Palestine, like to the Palestinian people. I wouldn't say to Palestine, because Palestine, we didn't know Palestine as we know it better today.
Yeah.
But for us, the Palestinian people were occupied by Israel in 1967. So we had no real conscience of the Nakba. I mean, also listening to what progressive politicians used to say in support of Palestine. I mean, the Palestinians have a right to a state like Israel has a state. Mm-hmm. The question is that Israel was created inside Palestine, and the creation of Israel meant the destruction of Palestine as it had existed until then, the erasure of over 500 villages, the commission of massacres during which women and defenseless women and men were killed, tortured, and even raped, like in Deir Yassin or in Tantura. All this is coming back now, but back then was a country where both institutions, politicians, and the people at large stood in solidarity with these people who opposed the oppression of an army, the Israeli army. I remember vividly the images of the first Intifada.
How old were you?
I was 10. I was 10 during those years, between 8 and 10. Mm-hmm. And I do remember the solidarity toward the people of Palestine, not just in Palestine, but the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. President Pertini, the president of the Republic back then, who was a partisan himself. I mean, he was one of the courageous people who had fought to liberate the country from Nazi fascism. So he was totally sympathetic and made the entire country aware of the struggle of the Palestinians as a struggle for liberation, you know. And so I do remember the kids throwing stones at tanks, military tanks, and this narrative or the words of that time, like breaking the bones. I've always associated breaking the bones because this was Rabin. Back then I think he was a prime minister, or he was in the government anyway. Look, like Yitzhak Rabin's policy was make sure that they comply, what does it mean comply? That they do not protest the occupation, the building of colonies, so the colonization of their land. So, and back then, so it was clear that there was such an affinity between who we were as a country, which had emerged from Nazi fascism, and the Palestinians. But at the same time, there was a strong solidarity and a strong sympathy toward Israel as well. So back then we could still reconcile and have wisdom and compassion toward Israelis and Palestinians, although we were not able to reconcile, to understand everything and reconcile everything. However, it was also a country plagued by serious issues. I mean, the mafia has not disappeared, but during the 90s, it was so violent, killing during the 80s and 90s, killing journalists, lawyers, law enforcement agents, and judges. And Falcone and Borsellino, the killing of Falcone and Borsellino really marked my late childhood or my early adolescence. This idea that these men who had pointed their finger toward the fact that the mafia is not a business of street thugs, but a white-collar business. It's something. The mafia happens with the collusion of the political power and the economic financial power. This is something that has never abandoned me, and actually I understand it even better now. So that legacy of those who fought against the mafia and were really abandoned during their struggle really marked my way of looking at the world. I also know that the worst form of mafia, the one which was paralyzing and silencing and strangling entire communities has been defeated, because at a certain point after the killing of Falcone and Borsellino in the early 90s, the entire population rose up and stood against it. And there have been so many associations like Libera or Antimafia created to really help those in the system, like police and other judges and lawyers, to get rid of the worst of it. But the critical knot of the partnership between the state and the local mafia has what Falcone and Borsellino had been killed. I mean, I don't know if they have been killed for, but this is it. What they were killed as they were investigating this. This has never been undone. However, this system, this has clearly shaped who I am as a person. I studied law. I mean, it was a coincidence, I have to say, but I studied law, and I've always been animated as by this deep intolerance. I have really an idiosyncrasy for the bullies. I don't. It's strong in me, and this is why it's not that I'm not scared. It's not that I don't understand the risk that right now, as a special rapporteur, as a UN mandate holder, I'm taking. Of course I am, but at the same time I say this is the system we are living in. This is the system I'm living for my children. Had it just be me in this world, without beloved ones around me, probably I would take care of myself better. But with all this, I can't. I mean, I'm one of those people who believe that whatever we have, we are borrowing from our children and not inheriting it from our parents. So we have to preserve what we have for our children. So this is why I think that everything I did until now has shaped the person you have in front of you.
And quite often you're also citing Primo Levi, yes, and probably from If This Is a Man book, and how much Levi was important for you, and creating your stance on Holocaust in Europe at the time.
Primo Levi, I think, has been the most important revealer in my own cognitive journey. Because you see, when you are young, and they read Primo Levi, I mean, we read Primo Levi when we are 11, 12.
Wow, that young.
It's very young. It's part of the... And Se Questo è un Uomo is if This Is a Man is a book that can be read at any age, really. But it's so difficult for a child to understand what a man can be reduced to. Really, it's what philosopher Giorgio Agamben would call bare life. And this is worse than bare life. I mean, what has been done during the Holocaust was really abominable. So this sense of abomination, something that cannot be part of our life, was also there in my mind, has been there, and I not realized that until I became a special rapporteur. There has been a critical moment during the past 2 years where I started really making a connection between the life of the Palestinians in Gaza and what Primo Levi used to write about. If this is a man, how can a man do that? Or can a human being do this to other human beings? And it's through dehumanization. When Nazi fascists were exterminating Jews, Roma and Sinti, or others, anyone who would not conform to this crazy, monstrous idea of the pure race, they were not seeing human beings. Like, and when once I heard an Israeli soldiers answering the question, why do you do this to children? And the soldier answered back, which children? Because they don't see children. They see, quote, terrorist in the making, unquote. So this is dehumanization. This is the dehumanization that leads to mass crimes, where you don't see the person as a person anymore, but as part of an unwanted population. They might be on the wrong religious group, the wrong ethnic group, or both. And they're held responsible for something, and they're exterminated. And this is when during this genocide in Palestine that I was obliged to document, I had to make the connection. The connection was made spontaneously. And especially during the first year of genocide, I've gone back and forth between my own reading of the situation and Primo Levi. And it's been a huge comfort. And it has been also a huge comfort to discover something that I didn't know. Primo Levi's criticism toward Israel. Primo Levi, Albert Einstein, Hannah Arendt, all the brilliant mind of the past century, Jewish brilliant minds of the past century, and they criticized Israel. And this has been also a sort of reassurance.
So when was the first time you went to Palestine?
2009. I went to Palestine quite late. In fact, I used to tease my mom saying you went there before me, because she went as part of a pilgrim to the holy sites.
Okay.
No, I went quite late, and it was after Kasled. Palestine had disappeared from the maps. What I was telling you before, Italy was it was another time of another era where we also had very learned diplomats who kept high the tradition of my country as a constitutional democracy which repudiates war, and there was another eye on the world. But after, there have been a few things. After the beginning of the peace process gave us the illusion that these two people would finally find an agreement. So Palestine started to disappear from the maps of our cognitive horizon. And then there has been the 9/11 and the Second Intifada. And the 9/11 and the Second Intifada have built on each other in projecting this image of the Palestinians as terrorists and slaughtering Israeli civilians. And therefore, since then, there has been such a negative connotation associated with the Palestinians. It had started before in certain countries, but because Palestinians were indeed involved in international terrorism during the 70s, and still, back then, their situation was understood as one of a national liberation movement, fighting against an oppressor. Because during the decolonization era, up to the 90s, there was this understanding of resistance movements as acceptable. I mean, uncomfortable as they could be for those in powers, they were eventually recognized. But then, when I went to Palestine,
in the early 2000s.
2009, 2010. This is when I moved to Palestine. Then at that point, I had read a lot over time. I had continued to document myself. But I had a very superficial understanding.
Until you went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even, about Palestine, I mean, even if I lived there for 3 years, I worked for UNRWA in the legal department, and then I've studied. After leaving the UN, I moved to the academia, and I've studied, and I've published scientific articles and a book, which is quite important in Middle Eastern and legal studies about Palestinian refugees in international law. I study 80 years of forced displacement from a legal, political point of view. And still, I had no idea of how much I would learn about Palestine during the 3 years of my mandate, and how much I would understand of the world through looking at Palestine.
So you have this unique perspective as during your mandate, you're one of the few or maybe the only one who actually lived in the Palestine, if we take in consideration your predecessors. But also, you frequently went back and forth to Palestine over the years up until when the sanctions were opposed and when we...
No, until I went, after I was in Palestine for 3 years between early 2010 until late 2012. And then I started working for academic research on Palestine after 2014, after the third war that Israel launched against Gaza, against this enclave, and it was brutal. So this is when I said, okay, probably I should... I've left Palestine, but Palestine has not left me.
And then you came back.
Then, since then, I've gone regularly, at least once a year, for research. Yeah, but also...
Until
2022.
2022 was the last time.
Because when I became a special rapporteur, then I've not been able to enter the Occupied Palestinian Territory anymore because Israel uses its it claims sovereignty over the land, but it's an unlawful occupation. So it shouldn't determine who enters and who doesn't. But it does it, and unfortunately, the international community, including the United Nations, go with it instead of opposing it.
So how much did the situation change? What have you witnessed with your own eyes, living in Palestine since 2009 and visiting and coming back year after year up until 2022? If you would compare 2009 and 2022 against each other, what would we see?
No, as I said, for me, the change, the crossing point was, or the Rubicon, from a cognitive point of view, was the beginning of my mandate as a special rapporteur. Because until then, I had, like the majority of the people, I had quite a fragmented and decontextualized and dehistoricized understanding of Palestine, in the sense. I have although I had written about Palestinian refugees, I know that Israel was created in Palestine and that had meant ethnic cleansing and dispossession of the Palestinians, so on and so forth. It took me, and I started to be aware of the apartheid system. I hadn't understood in full what the meaning of settler colonialism. I hadn't. And it was as I started looking at the situation from a human rights point of view, and I started documenting the violation of the right of self-determination, which is quite fundamental right, a collective right par excellence. It means the right to exist as a people. What do you do with your right with your freedom of expression or freedom of association when you're belonging to a group, being a national majority or a minority, is not only not recognized, but is hampered? This is the thing. And the Palestinians cannot enjoy their being a people. They cannot determine themselves politically, economically. And so and why? Because Israel claims sovereignty over the land, because God has given them the land, and so they have the right to displace the Palestinians who inhabit the little that remains of Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and replace them with settlers. So we, from outside, look at the Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem, at these atoms, these fragments of land. But if you look at it historically, and if you realize that Israel was created inside Palestine, creating this geographic fragmentation, and then that Israel has continued a state which has never accepted to have borders, recognized borders, because its borders continue to expand. So Israel has continued to build colonies, to declare war against the Palestinians, and treating them as an enemy, which is illegal under international law, because under international law, an occupying power cannot wage a war against the occupied population.
Have you witnessed firsthand settlers in a way of seeing Palestinian family in certain places and then seeing them replaced with settlers?
Absolutely. I used to, in Jerusalem, I used to live in Sheikh Jarrah. So the neighborhood where people were thrown out in the street with their mattresses, their computers, their belongings, all what they had collected in a lifetime, thrown out in the street in the middle of the night by the Israeli police, or in Jerusalem is the Israeli police, in the West Bank is the Israeli army, and then the day after the settlers from Brooklyn entering their homes and saying, this is mine. Yes, I stole it, but if I didn't steal it, someone else would have done it. This happened to the Al-Kurd family, which was living 150 meters from the place I had rented in Sheikh Jarrah, East Jerusalem, occupied East Jerusalem, and not too far from the United Nations. So you see there has been a tolerance of the unlawfulness of the Israeli practices under the UN nose.
So let's talk about little bit about what being a special rapporteur stands for, and what does it mean, and what is your scope of work?
Yep.
Because I think that many people do not really understand that, for example, your work is pro bono. You are not paid.
And I wish it was the worst part of this. Okay, so a special rapporteur is an independent expert of the United Nations who's chosen for his or her expertise. In my case, it was the Middle East and human rights and the question of Palestine. I had also worked with the United Nations and I had both this UN and academic hat, which probably sounded convincing. But so what I'm requested to do as a special rapporteur, and I am the 8th to serve on this capacity and the first woman in 33 years, is to document and report to the United Nations twice a year about the violations of international law committed in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem by Israel as an occupying power. And is there a bias in this resolution looking at Israel? No, because the question is that Israel shouldn't be there in the first place. So despite the so-called peace process, actually during the peace process, Israel has increased its colonies threefold.
Yep.
So there were 90 and now there are over about 300. Now there are nearly a million Israeli civilians who are also soldiers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem.
So your job is basically 4 things, as far as I know. You correct me: monitoring human rights, reporting to the UN, conducting country visits, which is you are stopped from doing that, and sending communications and recommendations to governments.
It's all part of the same, because normally you are supposed to, during the year, you receive information about violations, or they killed one person, or they arrested one person arbitrarily, and then you engage in dialogue with the state. And you should also go to visit, as a special rapporteur, you should also go and visit, but I'm prevented from doing. So
what I'm trying to ask is, but countries are not legally binding. You cannot compel states to obey your recommendation.
Not me, but other states. I mean, international law has mechanisms to compel states to comply.
Yeah.
There are sanctions, there are economic measures.
But when we're talking about major forces...
I mean, Israel is clearly the protege of the United States, but not just the United States. No, not just the United States. And this is one of the things that I've revealed through my work, but not because I knew it, it's because it has come as a surprise to me as well. And when I say I understand the world better through Palestine, is this, that I realized, look, how come that, Israel, over 900 days after since October 9, 2023, Israel has killed nearly 73,000 people. 73,000 people killed by bombs and sniper fire. And the use of unconventional weapons like thermic bombs and other crazy things that they are testing on the Palestinians. And they would have not been, and the international community, including this country, including Serbia, continues to trade with Israel business as usual. This is unlawful. Serbia, like other countries, is violating international law by doing that because what we know, and also because the International Court of Justice has looked at the situation in the Occupied Palestinian Territory and said the occupation is unlawful, must be dismantled totally, unconditionally. The troops must be withdrawn. The settlements must be dismantled. There shouldn't be more appropriation of Palestinian resources. Israel needs to make reparation to the Palestinians. And the states are obliged not to aid and assist the state that is Israel as it commits these crimes, as long as it maintains this unlawful presence. So, and on top of it, there are two genocide proceedings, one directly against Israel, one against Germany as the second weapon provider to Israel. Then there is Italy, which is now whose government officials have been accused of committing genocides by Italian lawyers, but also Serbia. Serbia has continued to send ammunition to Israel, so providing the tools that help Israel to slaughter Palestinians. So, of course, we live in a world where right now we are dominated by impunity, really by the hubris of people in the government that do what they want. But this is where our role as citizens come into play. We need to oppose this.
So yes, so what are the consequences when power countries do not listen to the communications recommendations from the government? I'm talking about the impunity, as you said before. So what are the long-term consequences of it? And what is the fallout probably for the international law, for the international relations?
Look around you. These are the consequences. I mean, Israel, because it has acted unrestrained, it's continuing to bring havoc upon the Levant, the Middle East. In 2024, when I presented my report, Anatomy of a Genocide, which was my fourth investigation, the first of 5 on the genocide, I said, what Israel started in Gaza will not stay in Gaza if Israel is not stopped, meaning through economic sanctions, political disengagement, and suspension of trade. European Union remains the first trading partner of Israel. So you see, member states are not just letting it happen. They are complicit. They're complicit because by disobeying the law, they're also allowing crimes to be committed. So Israel has continued to expand its war-led project. I keep on saying, Greater Israel is not a project concerning borders expansion only. It's about dominating a region, and it's doing that hand in hand, as it has always been since the 50s, as hand in hand with the United States. But I will tell you something more. I think that we are distracted, and we do not see the real problem in the sense
who we and in what way?
Human beings, like you, me, and probably those who are listening to us. Here is my argument that has infuriated many in power, but because they don't want this to be understood. Because if people understand where is the problem, chances are that they will organize and try to find a solution. But I say, today, first of all, Israel would have not been able to commit the crimes it has committed, televised and unpunished for 900 days, hadn't it been for member states providing political support, military tools, strategic coverage and excuses, and economic support with a system of banks, pension funds investing. And there are so many private actors from the military industry, surveillance industry, tech companies, construction companies, the tourist industry, tourism industry, and even universities and banks and pension funds and even NGOs have helped Israel maintain what I called an economy of occupation that has allowed Israel to displace the Palestinians, replacing him in the West Bank particularly, but now in Gaza as well, replacing them with others. They're discussing, the United States and others and the Israelis are discussing to transform Gaza in the Riviera of the Middle East, where immobilism has replaced the historical immobilism of the West. Now we are going there. Gaza is a land, a polluted land, a devastated land of mass graves. What are you going to build over that? But the distraction is that. So what has been happening in Gaza, and now it's expanding to Lebanon and Iran, has been possible by both people in power and both the economic sector, where there is this conjuncture of economic power, this concentration of economic power, so financial power, military power, and technology like communication and artificial intelligence. So there is this connivance. The people are enriching themselves while an entire population is being annihilated. And the thing is that we are distracted by the idea of states, by people we vote for in democracies, making decisions on behalf of us. But they're not the decision makers. The decision makers is exactly those who hold the military, financial, and communication power. And we are proxies, our countries.
Yeah, so I just want to say to everyone who's listening, everything you've just said is from two reports. One is The Economy of Occupation to Economy of Genocide, and the second one is Gaza Genocide, a Collective Crime.
Correct.
So I will put in pinned comment the links to all of those reports because they're publicly available. So anyone who's interested in reading those can check it out for themselves. And I wanted to ask you, so the Human Rights Council, how many countries are in the Human Rights Council?
47?
47, yeah.
48.
Something, yeah.
Yes.
And they rotate
47.
every 2 to 4 years. And in the first time in history is that America has left. America has left, and now they are initiating something that we can call, reform of the bodies and agencies within the UN. So, what can you tell me more about what this reform supposed to be, the way it's supposed to be done, and what are the long-term consequences and for the future mandates also?
Look, I'm not aware, so I cannot really comment on the US reform plan, but I can tell you that I can sense what is the US-led dismantlement of multilateralism as it has existed until now is about. Because if we just look at the Board of Peace, which should have resolved by now a number of problems of the Palestinians, it's just been a huge distraction and a huge replacement of the functions of the UN Security Council, which frankly, with all its drawbacks and limitations, it's still representative, it's still a UN charter-based organization, while the US Board of Peace emanates from the brain of the US president who sits there for his entire lifetime. It's based on financial contribution, and it's going to discuss peace. Why, if there is the United Nations? Why are you creating this body? And what puzzles me is not even the audacity of the United States under this administration, because it's very clear. Analysts have spoken and written about the decline, the economic, geopolitical decline of the United States for quite some time now. And So this is why the US right now, it's using what it have. Its military might to scare the hell out of everyone, threatening Costa Rica, Canada, threatening everyone with tariffs, with a tariff war, and then threatening to invade Greenland. Let's talk about Greenland, which, by the way, how it's possible that it's even Danish. What about the Inuit who inhabit Greenland? So, it's incredible what this administration and its leader are proposing. But even more incredible is the fact that that no one is challenging him. I see a world of, apart from Spain and really noble countries in the global south, like South Africa, Namibia, Colombia, Malaysia, who are bearing the brunt of challenging the United States. Because there are established mechanisms to unravel, to undo political systems through infiltration, through coup d'etat and others. So these countries are risking. And at the same time, they stood the ground against this intimidation-driven system. And so, but while a few of them resist, the United States and the system that they embody today, the majority go with it or don't challenge it. Why? And again, I think it's because the network of business-related interests are so strong that make economic power much more relevant than the democratic. The democratic.
So how do you justify?
Process.
Yeah, so how do you justify then the existence of special procedures when powerful countries are just ignoring them, and what kind of so how efficient they are, and why are they important now more than ever? Maybe.
Yes. I don't think at all that we are ignored. I think that now there is an attempt to really dismantle the system, to dismantle the human rights system. Look at the cuts to the not just to the UN, to the human rights system in particular. As we speak, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which is the Geneva-based organization, part of the Secretariat that provides support to the Human Rights Council, to the UN treaty bodies, to special procedures, is being seriously affected. It's going through severe, brutal cuts. And special procedures, especially in the past years, I recognize that I've heavily contributed for good or worse or bad, but I've become really a denouncing voice of international crimes committed not just by Israel, but the United States and others. Because if you read what the Special Rapporteur on Iran or the Special Rapporteur, the independent expert on the International Democratic Order or the Special Rapporteur on counterterrorism, we speak with one voice because we are independent. We are not afraid to denounce the genocide, the war crimes, the crimes of aggression that the United States and Israel are committing in the region. We are taking the risk upon ourselves as individuals. Yeah. But again, it's really worth doing because what is at stake is the freedom or what remains of the freedom of millions of people.
At which capacity we have double standards when it comes to the so-called narratives when we talk about countries which are the part of the which are the UN members. For example, when we talk about aggression, what is the or the wars? What is the difference in the narratives when they talk about Russia and when they talk about Israel? Or, for example, what is the difference in narrative when they talk about Sudan and Palestine?
Look, double standards are phenomenally evident. I remember I had a discussion with a senior EU official a few months after Russia had invaded Ukraine, and I was mentioning the double standards in the way the overall thing was described. I mean, they were talking of aggression. Well, of course, it was an aggression against the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. But I was asking, why don't you say the same about Israel? And I was also talking of how the Ukrainian refugees have been received. Great, really, this is the way people fleeing a conflict situation should be received. But I was saying just a few kilometers away from the border where the Ukrainian refugees are allowed to enter Europe, look at how refugees from Africa or from the Middle East are being treated. So the double standards are evident. And I was answered, I'm surprised that someone with a, quote, UN tag, unquote, expresses herself, double standards, accusing us, European Union of double standards. How do you dare? Well, look at where we are 2 years later, thanks to the double standards practiced by these bureaucrats. It's not different than during, we are better, we are more educated about human rights, and thank God, because really we have if we have a global conscientization around what's happening in Palestine, is also because we understand human rights. I mean, that we are a carrier and holder of rights much more than we have ever done. However, I think that the European Union has unfortunately proven to be nothing more and nothing less than the legacy of the colonial bureaucracy that has practiced double standard because of its racism, its inner Orientalism for centuries. And today, the European Union is becoming the institutional fig leaf to violate international law and so to practice double standards without being held accountable. Because, you have European countries saying, we cannot take a decision on our own because we depend on the European Union. We cannot cut ties with Israel because of the European Union, and we cannot impose the sanctions because of the European Union. No, because you, as a state, you have entered contractual obligations when you signed all these fantastic treaties, the Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the Genocide Convention, the Economic, Social and Cultural Rights Convention. So no, you have obligations. And there is something called law of state responsibility. So if you aid and assist a state that is committing international wrongdoings, you pay as a state. But this is fantasy today, because who's going to hold whom accountable? But citizens can. Citizens, and this is why I'm so happy to be in Serbia, because the fact, I don't know if there is a full understanding in this country. I really don't know, so I'm curious. But what the students have started with this national mobilization, getting united for one entire year, protesting and growing.
More than a year, yeah.
Yeah.
More than a year, a lot more.
More than 1 year. 1 year and a half?
Yeah.
1 year and a half, it's right. This is something that we have followed from abroad, but I have seen the power of this kind of resistance if it was imitated somewhere else. So if we thought as a humanity, you see, there have been the workers, the dock workers in Italy and other parts of Europe going on strike. And then there are the Serbian students and the Serbian young population, and that actually the Serbian population, taking the streets against the government. And then if we take all these good examples, and then we have the BDS movement telling us how to be ethical purchases, ethical sales, ethical investment, which is basically try not to buy products that have to do with the Israeli economy. If Serbia followed these rules, the Serbian government wouldn't expose itself to liability. So now we need also conscientious, courageous lawyers starting to investigate if there is and if there is, as I think there is, the opportunity to open up an investigation against, over the practices of the current government of selling weapons transferring weapons to Israel.
Yeah.
This is a clear violation of international law. The fact that you have the president saying, we are transferring weapons and we will continue to transfer weapons. This is such an admission of responsibility. It doesn't matter that he misqualifies international law because he says this is not, if I understand correctly, he said that there is no conclusion that a conclusive assessment that Israel is committing genocide. It doesn't matter. Serbia should know better, because in Bosnia versus Serbia, if there is one thing that is certain, is that International Court of Justice recognized an obligation to prevent that kicks in the moment a state is alerted that there is a risk of genocide. So the International Court of Justice has started 2 proceedings against Israel and against Germany for genocide. Israeli leaders are wanted by the ICC for war crimes and crimes against humanity, and there are many submissions concerning genocide. So the very prosecutor, which is now being punished and sanctioned, has said, I absolutely don't rule out the possibility to investigate genocide. But we started with the evidence we have collected. And then we have a commission of inquiry documenting for 2 years the genocide and saying it's genocide. We have Israeli organizations, B'Tselem, saying in Hebrew, this is our genocide. Yeah. What else does the president of Serbia need to understand that he's risking himself and also to bring this upon the Serbian people? The Serbian people, I'm sorry, it pains me to remember the Serbian people that there is already a genocide that has been committed by this country, or for which this country, in which this country was involved through the Srpska Republic. So it's time to show that we can be better than in the past.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I just wanted to have one or maybe two questions. One is, I know that this you're paying huge personal price for being such an outspoken and, well, brave. I think it's an understatement. Personal pricing means the US and Israel put sanctions on you. They froze in your state. They blocked your accounts. You getting a lot of personal threats and your family. So how are you handling this entire situation right now? And all of us are really very grateful for that we have someone like you in such a public position speaking, how they say it, truth to power, right? But how are you handling this situation?
Look, I wouldn't say that actually it's fun, because it's not. It's absolute. I mean, it comes as a huge sacrifice. I mean, I don't even calculate the kind of sacrifices I make, because honestly, my entire life is it's not even mine anymore. I mean, I'm here and this is really to share something human. I'm here because this is the holiday period of my children at school. So I made sure that they visit friends, and I'm talking to you, and I spent the entire day talking to journalists, because the only thing I want is that the sacrifice that I've imposed on my children, and I'm part of, and I cannot. Probably if I went back in time, I would wonder, is it worth? But knowing myself, I would do what I'm doing anyway. And the thing is that I want the genocide to stop, and the genocide will not stop if countries like Serbia continue to send ammunition to Israel. This must stop, and this is not just a decision of President Vučić. There are people who are profiting from this in this country, and this must end. And there is only one people who can stop it, and it's the Serbian people. And this is why I'm here. Yes.
And last question is, your next report is coming out soon. And it's going to be about, as far as I know, torture.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the report that is coming now? And when it's going to see the light of day?
I think it was published today.
Today?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, so we're going to put it in the link.
Yeah, too. I know that I've been saying that for a while now. Every time I submit a report, I say, this is going to be a bombshell. It's awful. It's awful. I mean, there are certain things that become the trademark of genocides. So Srebrenica and the massacres of innocent men and young men in Srebrenica became the image and the known story of that genocide. And there are so many things that could mark the memory of this time. I mean, surely the bombs, the starvation, and still, I think that the trademark of this genocide will be torture. The way Israelis, not Benjamin Netanyahu, the way Israelis have tortured Palestinians is something that is beyond what words can say. And again, there is one passage of the report that was very painful. It was very painful to write it because there are 300 testimonies that have been collected primarily by Israeli and Palestinian and Israeli lawyers and civil society. They made submissions to me. They published. They made public, wrote public reports, and then I've also collected information myself through interviewing survivors. And the thing is that the Israelis have claimed the right to rape, the right to torture Palestinians. This is not something that they've been ordered to do. This is something they've done. And I don't think it's the harm that they've done to an entire people is understood. We need to there is a cultural time that is needed to absorb what has been done to the victims. But again, what has happened, the way the Israelis, soldiers, settlers, ordinary citizens who have been invited to tour the prisons while Palestinians were tortured and humiliated is something that it's really beyond what we have known until now. So I encourage. There is that much that you can write in a UN report of 8,000 words, but I really encourage those who have the courage to do that to read the testimonies that have been collected by Palestinians and Israeli human rights organizations and even the UN before me, UNRWA, because the words of those survivors tell it all. And they have been tortured and raped because they are Palestinians. Doctors, journalists, UN staff, they have been tortured more than others because of who they are in the society. So that the body and mind of a collective could be made dysfunctional and not returned to life. Because if it's true what the Holocaust survivor Jeanne Améry said, that torture is the destruction of one person's world, so that he cannot return to his or her life after being tortured. Imagine when this is done to a people, not just through the torture of custodial practices, but imagine being a survivor of mass starvation campaign, being a survivor to your entire family being decimated. There are over 20,000 children who were killed. And then there is the same number of children who were made orphans, and the same number of children who were mutilated. This is what Israel is. And this is what Israel does, and this is why it is to be stopped.
For the end, your book, When the World Sleeps, Stories, Words and Wounds of Palestine, is available now in Serbian, right? In Serbian language, it's translated. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the book? And I'm really glad that it's translated. So we're gonna put the link in description and pin comment so people can order it. So, what the book is about?
The book is about Palestine, but it's an interesting book. I really like there was an introduction, a preface made for one of the translations. Has been translated. It became a bestseller in Italy. It's been among the most read books for 6 months after its publication, and it's still going well. And then it was translated in 18 languages, including in Serbia, and it's a book about international law without being an international law book. It's about history without being a history book. It's about personal lives without being a biography. And it's about my own life and my own experience in Palestine. So it's a bit of an all-rounder book that allows people who might not know even where Palestine is on the map, what it is about. And I chose this way of having real characters that I've met in my life, Palestinians and Israelis, telling the story. There are two characters who are neither Palestinian nor Israelis, but this is, again, a surprise for those who will want to read it. It's really about, it's to navigate what Palestine is. And I agree with I agree with the Indian writer Arundhati Roy when she calls Palestine a wound. Palestine is a wound in history, in human intelligence, in humanity, in terms of the United Nations and international law. And I hope that these stories will help people understand why so, and why we can all help heal this wound. And there is something extremely cathartic in the way we can take care of each other. And by doing so, we also heal our own wounds and our own pasts.
Thank you for everything. I believe that I'm speaking in the name of everyone in the room and everyone in the name of everyone who's listening. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for everything that you stand for. Thank you for your bravery, for your enormous courage, and keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel of this entire situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope to see that day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.